Zypha says, as Google takes time removing old content from its index, will there be duplicate content issues when changing LOG root and subdomains as it got a penalty? No, because it's not duplicate content if it's on a different domain. It's only duplicate content if it's on the same domain. Do you understand? So if you're changing the domain, it's not duplicate content. There's an original and copies. So you have a copy of the original, but the original is now down. If you take the site down, it's down. It doesn't resolve. Even if it's still in Google's index, the site is down. So it's no longer a copy where there was an original copy. An original copy occurs when the original is still present, published, live on the web. Does that make sense? Then so no. However, there is something that this question sparked an idea that I've not tested, but I think it would be interesting to test. And somebody here on this call, on the webinar, may know the answer to this. I don't, and I'm curious about it. But that is, I don't know if you guys are aware, but in Search Console, you can, in settings, you can do a change of address. I'm curious because I've never done it. If a domain catches an algorithmic penalty and then you change the domain, I've never done the change address with Search Console from a penalized domain to a new domain. That's the question that I have. I've done the change of address multiple times when I'm just changing the domain of a website from one domain to another where there was no penalty applied. And I've done a number of domain changes when an algorithmic penalty has been applied, but I've never done the change of address option. And I'm curious, I don't know this, and I'm not telling you to do it. I think it would be a good test, but it would be interesting to see if a domain that caught an algorithmic penalty, if you then change the domain and you did a change of address in Search Console, will the penalty then pass? And that's again, I don't know the answer to that. Somebody else might. I don't. I think it would be an interesting test. Because I do recommend when changing domains from one domain to another for sites that aren't penalized, that if you've had it in Search Console, that you do the change of address process. So anyway, I just pointed that out because I thought that was interesting. I pulled this up just to show that might be an option that you can do, but when you have content across two different domains, it is not duplicate. It's a duplicate issue when there's copies of the content or a page on the same domain, if that makes sense. It's like, think about this. What are press releases, right? Press releases would be duplicate content if that were really a thing across multiple domains, but they're not. Press releases, there's the original, and then there's the copies. The original is always what is cited in the distribution pickup points. That's why most press releases, distribution companies, wherever the press release originates, the original publication point will then be cited at the beginning of all the press releases and all the pickups, all the other syndication points. If that makes sense. So it's not a duplicate content issue. It is a penalty issue, and if you have originals and copies, and if the original is no longer live on the web, and then it's just the copies, then it's not going to be an issue. Like I said, I would still do if you haven't built any links to the domain that your reader that you have replaced, then there's no need to do any sort of a redirect. Okay. I've done redirects from the penalized domain to the new domain, and it did not pass the penalty. Just to be clear. That's why I was curious if doing the change of address option in Search Console would pass the penalty or not. And that's a question I don't know. It would be interesting to test that, though. So anyway, moving on. It's a good question. Yeah, once you have the new domain, I don't know if you're doing in WordPress, I would need to copy the old root domain and subdomain sites to new subdomain sites, then delete the old sites and submit the new ones for indexing. Yeah, and that's fine, but that's not a duplicate content issue, and it should not cause any problems, just to be clear.